So what about the sections and the formatting? So up at the top here, you ought to have your personal contact info. Some people are not putting their address for security reasons, as long as you have your email and phone number there. I'm finding that people right up top are including their Twitter account. In some cases, they're putting their LinkedIn public profile. If you have one, that's something that people are starting to do. Not using their picture, not using a photograph. It happens in other countries, but not in this country. And if you can put it all in one line, why not? Like, I know some people who've put, their phone number on one line, their email on the next line, their address on the next line, and all this, and it takes 10 lines just for their personal contact info. Get it on 1 or 2 lines. Here's an idea for you that you might really like. If you have a section at the top of your resume called highlights or summary or one of these things, I find that those sections are generally pretty lame, and that most employers aren't going to bother reading them because they're so lame. What do I mean by lame? Superior communication skills, excellent interpersonal skills. These blind claims of skills are worse than useless. If you have that, I encourage you to get rid of it immediately. Why? Because you're forcing the reader to look at these things where you're not giving them any context for your skills. As an alternative, you might consider using a section right at the top, profile for the position of marketing coordinator. So right away, the employer, the reader of your resume, if you've used their job title in your resume and it took you all of 5 seconds to make that change, right away they know you bothered reading their posting and it's not a generic application. Right away you've got their attention. Then, if you can put 4 or 5, and no more, honestly, like I've seen pages like people sometimes have 20 points in their profile, complete waste of time. If you can have 4 or 5 points of supreme relevance that talk about the stuff that they asked about, then you're going places. Then, you have Sherry there over at Coast Hotel nodding her head up and down saying, great, look, she's actually responding to our posting. That's awesome. So this is a great little tool or tactic. You'll see Juanita more or less has this. Profile for the position of communications manager. That was the job that was posted. And not only that, when she claims her skills, she's showing the employer where she got that. OCB is the Ontario Craft Brewers. Therefore, the employer knows where to look to find more information about the skill that Juanita is claiming in her profile. Do that. Right? Or you don't have to put it in brackets. You might say, solved hundreds of problems on a daily basis at Space for Lease. Those kinds of gateway bullet points make sense to employers. I say gateway because then the profile becomes a gateway to the other components of your resume. That's where the profile or the summary becomes valuable. If you're not going to do that, I encourage you to get rid of that section right away. You're going to do better with your education and experience alone, and the summary in a generic format is only going to do more harm than good. Get rid of it right away. Then start with your education or experience. If you have experience, I'd encourage you to start with experience. I know many recent grads, as maybe on the webinar today, might not have as much experience. So, okay, put your education first if you want, because you've got that great degree or diploma that you worked so hard to get. But don't just let it stand there. Try and at least put something else that says, you wrote an essay on this or you did such and such a project, so that when they see it in your experience section, they get more stuff on that. The setup of each one of those sections should have a title, like your job title, the organization, city, and dates. Nice to have an optional company description in italics in case that employer doesn't know what the company does. Start each bullet with a verb ordered by relevance, and then you might have an optional achievements or results section and an optional award section. So back to Juanita here. Let me show you something. Look at what she's done for this first position, right? Here's the setup all in one line. She's got an italics thing here explaining what the company does. Here are her bullet points, one by one of what she did, kind of like what we were looking at before. But here's an idea for you. Look down here at what Juanita has done. She has a section called results, and she has it for every job or item in her experience. Ideally, you can use something quantitative here. Juanita has a bit of experience in the world of work, so she can make these pretty nice claims. 34% increase, 20% this. She's made some big differences, but you don't need those. Look at what she's got. She's got a quote from her marketing director. Juanita walks on water, says the marketing director, a little quote that she's put right on the results. Surely you can think of some result, something that somebody said, or some number that you could claim. And the beauty of putting results, and you don't have to use the word results, that word might say impact, or it might say accomplishment. Those three words, results, impact, and accomplishment, are amazing words. And if you have that next to everything in your resume, then suddenly you, Juanita, start to look like a very results-oriented person, and that employer is interested in you. And most people don't do this. And I found that when people change their resume with this little results thing, they start to get more interviews. So that's a really handy little tip that I encourage you to think about using, is this achievements or results or impact. Really great little tip. And I know sometimes it's tricky for you to come up with the exact tip, the exact achievement, and we certainly help people do that. We help them figure that kind of stuff out. So that's something that you might get from your, from your Career Center if you came to us. Yeah, and I'm just looking at the questions here too, and I just want to respond to that question. For high school students, so how would you apply to your first job if you have no work experience? And what I want to say about experience here is it doesn't have to be work experience. So let's look at volunteer experiences. Let's look at projects that you did in school, okay? Let's look at even a demonstrated interest. And if I say a demonstrated interest, it might be something that you've been involved in. And I don't care if it's poker or dancing or food or whatever. Each one of those experiences can be put in to your resume in a way that starts to make sense. You can include it in an experience section, or you can include it in a volunteer experience. Volunteer, I know a lot of employers put a lot of weight on volunteer experiences. And honestly, no matter where you are in your career, early or mid-career, whatever, a great way to get experience and skills is volunteering. And so if you do have any volunteer experience, I'd encourage you to include it. But don't just say volunteered at the ABC organization. Put bullet points exactly like we've put them in earlier in the session today, so that you can say what you actually did, And even if you planted trees, well, you probably interacted with other people. Maybe you had some cross-cultural communication with other people because there were people from different parts of the world there, different parts of the city. You demonstrated your environmental perspective. So there's always ways to draw from your experience something that might be relevant to that employer. So I'd really encourage you to think about all those experiences, even if you haven't had paid work experiences. It's okay. Employers get it, especially if you're in high school. You haven't had that much time to get that. So this profile is just what I copied from Juanita there, because I didn't know if I was going to be able to share the screen there. So I'm going to just jump over that and go straight to the, let's see the next part. Hang on, the screen isn't advancing here. So we looked at her resume. When I look at people's resume, I look at it on 3 levels. First, quick view format, easy to read. Are the dates all on the right or the left? Is the font consistent? Like, you should see, so many resumes are such a mess, honestly, that if you have a decent-looking resume, you're already, in the top quarter of people. So first, the format, how does it look? I'm looking for these key things. Are the setups all consistent? Organization of the section. So, where's your education relative to your experience? Where's that volunteer experience? Do you have what I sometimes call technical skills, or, depending, like if you're a technical, like an engineer, you might call it technical skills. If you studied English or something where you don't have as much technical skills, you might call it computer skills. People want to see that section. Can you say that you have Word or Excel or PowerPoint, or that you know Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn? Can you say that? And then finally, the contents. Do the bullets really speak to those employers' needs? Are they not just generic? And that's the way I look at it. So, we've talked a little bit about formatting and content. Let me ask you another poll question here. Thinking about what we've talked about so far, how good an idea is it to look at job postings and use the employer's language?